Now you think Obama's a Marxist?
Yeah.
Also,
he's a radical leftist, and he. To call him a communist per se, it's like he's beyond that. He's just a radical that wants to become a major power, and he wants to do away with the government, the U.S. system as it is known, and that's why I don't think this system's ever going to recover. When he got away with his Obamacare, the public was so ignorant of what was really going on with that. It's going to come out. And they didn't even see it when Obama delayed the thing until after the election, which says that corporations can then do away with their employees' health care.
I would agree with you. I'm a socialist myself. I'm a socialist, but I'm in no favor of Obamacare because it forces the poor to pay money to rich insurance companies, and they're being forced by law to pay money to a rich corporation. Now, I can't see how you could describe that as socialism or Marxism, and it's more like a fascism. Wouldn't you consider that to force poor people to give money to rich companies would be fascism?
Well, in some ways, when I talked with Thomas Sowell, I had an interesting discussion with Thomas Sowell for a few minutes down in the peninsula below San Francisco, and we chatted a little bit, and I asked him about some of these things that's going on about the liberals. I have nothing against outspoken socialists who are upfront about what they're doing and their means, because a lot of those guys are pretty honest. But it's the liberals who are in it for just the power. And those are the ones that I'm concerned about. But Thomas Sowell said the first thing you have to know about liberals is that they're totalitarians. But I don't think you're a totalitarian.
Oh, no.
No, I don't sense that at all.
Well, I'm a Christian as well, by the way, so I'm with the Assemblies of God, and I was actually an evangelist. I traveled with a tent ministry for like 5 or 6 years out of my life. But I think I believe in the full gospel. Do you believe in like the fruits of the Spirit and the gifts of the Spirit and stuff?
Yeah.
You do?
Interesting, Assembly of God. I got in touch with a big pastor in the Assemblies of God here in California when I was observing Jim Baker, and I met with this guy at his office. He's a major pastor, Jim Coles. And I said, I want to tell you, I think that Jim Baker is losing it. I think he's really losing it. I think you ought to look into him. And then he said to me, and confidentially said, we're already looking into him. And that was before the whole thing came out, what was going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we have a couple of callers joined us. We have Bruce McDonald, who is a journalist himself. And we have area code 425. 425, who are you?
Yes, Ed. It's me, Tim, hijacker.
Oh, hey, hijacker, how are you, man?
Boy, unbelievable that we got so much in common, Ed. We truly are political and religious brothers, because I'm a socialist as well.
Okay.
A progressive socialist. But this whole socialist name's been so trashed up that it's just, I don't even think you can say the name anymore. But this is my question for your guest. To have a 20,000 cult member in the heart of Southern California, L.A., and especially when they went international to Guyana, I had heard, this is what I heard through a whistleblower. I can't recall his name. I can't recall the radio show. But he said that he knows for a fact, or he actually knew a member, that once the congressman was killed in Guyana, Jonestown, that these guys got a call. They were a black op clean unit, whatever that means. They come in and they wipe people out, or they make things. For instance, in the movie Jack Ryan, after he killed that guy, I don't know if you saw that recent movie, Jack Ryan, that they got groups like that all over the world. But anyways, they said a clean unit, a black op clean unit came in after they heard that the congressman was killed, and whoever didn't, they watched it, and whoever didn't drink the Kool-Aid, they basically went in, and there was lots of people that were killed by gunshots, including the bodyguards, and they just cleaned it right off, and they just finished everything off. And then, so my question is that because you've been so involved in this, and you know so much about it, how is it that you can miss that there's like a big connection between, Jonestown, or every couple of years it's a Boys Town, or it's an O'Leary, it's one little group after another. Where's the CIA come in, especially once they went international? How much do you know about that? Do you know anything about that? Go ahead.
Like I said earlier, I have no doubt that the CIA was aware of the Jones cult. My point is that I don't think that all these rumors of Jones being working with the CIA, that largely stems from Jones's tendency to talk about everything that he's involved with and all his connections with big wheels and all that stuff. He has no inhibitions about laying out all sorts of stories like that. I just can't believe that the CIA is savvy enough not to see that this guy is a charlatan from the first go.
Yeah,
and
but David, look at guys that the CIA use like Frank Sturgis and these kind of guys. These are pretty wild, and Barry Seal.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
They've got hired killers and all that. I know all that,
Yeah, we got one on the station
but as far as Jones goes, Jones he is just out of that level with them. I mean, he's...
Well, see, he had access to the children. They seem to gravitate like to Boys Town and to different organizations where they get the children, where they can recruit them really young. I came out of a boarding school.
By the way, I'm sorry, I just have to throw in one quick point here. In referencing Georgetown, the American thing, it's the first time you've gotten the name of the city in Guyana correct. It actually is Georgetown, not Jonestown.
No,
the camp was Jonestown.
The cult was in Jonestown. The capital of Guyana is Georgetown.
Right.
And where Congressman Ryan was killed was the little community of Port Kaituma.
Okay. Right on the runway.
Which is just
right on the runway. The little runway.
Yeah,
there.
he wasn't killed in Jonestown. Yeah, well, as you well know. But I just want to make that clear.
I just wanted to add a little bit of light as far as the CIA angle and how they operate. And they do use these schools when a family gets busted up and the children get split up and they go to these various places.
That reminds me, what about the group World Vision? David, are you familiar with the group World Vision?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Now, they visited Jim Jones in Ukiah. And you know about their connections to David Hinckley and even Mark David Chapman. Just an odd coincidence?
Well, I wouldn't say it's, a complete coincidence.
Okay.
No.
I'm just saying because I've listened to Ed's show week after week, and he's slowly weaving if you step back from the force and take a look at the whole mosaic, the whole broad thing, like the 60s. You thought the 60s and the drug culture and all that just got going, and it turns out there was some type of military CIA connection to all those various people. It just seems like there's a thread that just runs through it all, so that the reality that we're really looking at, you cannot discount that the CIA, they went operational at some point with the Jonestown people. But thanks so much, Ed, for letting me jump in here. I just wanted to add that. I love your shows every week. You're great. You're an intellectual. Just keep at it. You're just doing great work. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thank you very much. And just hang out, okay? Because we got Christian Wallace, and we also have Bruce McDonald. Now, Bruce McDonald has actually been to Guyana.
Yes, I have. I was there for about 5 days in, I think, 2002. on I was doing a video for a gold mining company in Canada. So I got a lot of the lore. I got a lot of the sort of local lore. First of all, it's one of the spookiest places you can ever go in your life. I'm a very well-traveled guy. I've lived on 3 continents, and been to numerous countries, and probably the scariest place I've ever been is Georgetown, Guyana. There's just this. It's the perfect place to go to not be noticed by anybody, and I appreciate the research you've done on this. But there's absolutely no way that I believe that Jim Jones was a standalone operation. There's absolutely no possible way. Getting back to what Hijacker was saying in praise of Ed and your show, I've noticed what Hijacker's noticing as well, Ed, is that you're weaving together a thesis here. It's like a postdoctoral thesis on the nature and presence of evil. And I'm very grateful because, it's something that human beings have to come to terms with. Because think of it like a 12-step program. The first thing we all have to do is admit that this is here and it's real. Evil is stuff that's done for no purpose other than to do it, and the empowerment or whatever other stuff is involved in it. If you want to get into the sort of, I guess, the occult dimension of it, which I don't entertain too much. I sort of stick to Tolkien's advice in The Lord of the Rings when Gandalf says, "Don't study the dark ways too much; they're infectious."
Yeah.
But no way for a moment do I believe that Jones was a standalone person. Now, when I was in Georgetown, I had occasion to meet a few high rollers down there. I met a guy who his name was Jainareen Singh. He was a member of the bar there, a defense lawyer. I think he's now in the Guinness World Book of Records for the highest number of successful murder defenses. He's a judge now. And nobody would come out and say definitively what happened, but the general consensus amongst intelligent people in Guyana, people who run things there, is that this was, a government operation, and that Jones was not on his own. First of all, why would they let him in? Why would they let him in to set up this camp? I mean, try and do that sometime. Yeah. Try and do that in Panama. Hey, I'd like to come down there. I'd like to bring 500 Americans with me. We don't want to be leaving the country every 3 months for a visa. Can you give us special resident status? Well, what is it you're planning on doing here, sir? You don't even get that done unless you've got a little wind behind your sail. Okay?
Yeah, so David, how do you think he got away with that part?
I believe that his charisma and all that, and he would say and do all. He knew how to play into people's favor, and Burnham. I think Burnham was kind of a liberal approach too, and so I think he just and also there's money involved. Jones had a lot of money.
Yeah, where did it all come from? It couldn't have all come from these welfare checks, man. There had to be something other funding because he left Brazil with money.
Yeah. He had hundreds of thousands of dollars of property turned over to him after people died. Like I say, he had little old ladies, and he got them to sign over all their property. And then when they died, that was all turned over to him. He was
but David,
he had the money. He gave $100,000 to the disciples.
Well, let's do the math, okay? If he had 20,000 members and each one had a $100,000 house, and each one of them gave him $100,000, which the houses back then weren't $100,000.
No, not at all.
Yeah, right. That's not enough money, man, to build a camp and flying back and forth and bribing people. And there had to be an additional source of money.
the property was out where it was not, it wasn't worth much at all, and that was where they had a big struggle with trying to make a go of it there. But he had all these slave laborers working on it.
Yeah.
But the property didn't cost him much.
But they had a boat. They built an airstrip. They had planes going in and out.
Daily food budget would have been thousands of dollars.
Well, they were growing food down there.
They were.
Okay, all right.
That's one thing, yeah. But the drugs, they had a couple of $1 million worth of drugs down there at a medical facility that everybody, even Mark Lane said that. I know Mark Lane was threatening you, but even Mark Lane said that the medical facility they had down there was above anything in that town.
Well, in February of 1978, that's like 8 or 9 months before the mass murder, I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister, Forbes Burnham, and tried to warn him of what a mess he was getting involved in with this Jones down there. But I never heard back. But I don't know what they ever did with that letter, but I really said a mouthful in that letter.
David, what motivated you so much to go after this guy to such a degree?
What motivated?
Yeah, what motivated you? There's a lot of things that I see go on here in Vegas that
like I said early on, I just stumbled into this, but I realized I was looking into one of the most evil people I had ever imagined. This is a guy so evil that and had the power to cover it up for those years. Even when it was available, politicians, because they were so sympathetic to his so-called cause, that they didn't bother really looking into him, and yet the information was there. I mean, what kind of a man, for example, has his private meeting in his house, in his commission, the planning commission, and some little old lady is there, and she raised her hand and she had to go to the bathroom. What kind of a guy wouldn't let her go to the bathroom? And then when she was struggling, he had her put up on stage and had somebody get a tin can and forced her to defecate in the tin can. I mean, it's just hard to explain how flawed a mind we're dealing with. Therefore, that's why I'm saying I'm not surprised at anything that man did. He was absolutely schizoid in some ways, but he was very sharp and knew how to manipulate people. But I just realized I had never seen anybody so evil, and by that time, I realized that I knew that those people were doomed down there. That was my primary motivation, is to have somehow try to... I wrote to the Secretary of State, Cyrus Vance. I wrote him also in February of 1978, and I tried to get him alerted to what a danger Jim Jones was. And like I told the Disciples General Minister in the division there, I said, what are we going to do about these kids? We have to do something. But that was my motivation. Those people were doomed because I knew that Jones was kind of dedicated to having some kind of suicidal event. So I knew I just had no choice. I did what little I could do. I did everything I could think of.
You did a lot.
And I failed, really. I failed. And I was, when I was informed on, that was the turning point. That's when Jones got really frantic and desperate because he knew then that I was connected or in touch with the federal agents. But I did that. I got in touch with Cap because of where this was going. And like I say, I believe I'm the only person who seriously warned that Ryan wasn't going to come out of South America alive. That's how desperate I was, and that's how into Jones's mind I had gotten. And I'm not sure that that's a good thing to do. One reporter that I was working with and he was really, I could just see he was having quite a time. He was going after the bad guy. And this guy I was very suspicious of, and I didn't like him. And when I saw him doing that, and he was preparing, an expose, I said, you got to be careful. I remember this vividly. He was sitting on a couch in his living room. I said, when you go after that kind of evil, you have to be very careful, because it will reach out and strike you like a cobra. You have no idea what you get into. Here's the irony. Let me ask you a question. No, here's the important irony. That guy later was called out and charged with molesting a 3-year-old child, his son. And I talked with a psychiatrist who was on the case. But my point is, that guy, he was messing and in it for wrong reasons. He was it's like he knew what he was, so he was going to go after the bad guy. That's my point. You've got to be careful when you get mixed up with evil.
Right,
and going after
it's
people.
A spiritual battle.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right, but now, did you experience that? Because now Jones was all tapped into that humiliation and the abuse and the evil there. He was all tapped in. I assume he was getting power from that. Now, were you experiencing a spiritual battle on a spiritual level with Jones?
Oh yeah. I mean, it wasn't long before I realized that, in fact, it got so bizarre that, not too many people know this, but it's in one of my articles. In fact, it's in one of my books. When at the time Jones was in the last stages of in the last year or so, he came down with a tremendous ear infection. And when I read that in the paper, at the very same time, I had one of the worst ear infections I've ever had in my life. Terribly painful, and it's like also there are odd coincidences. I realized that Jones graduated from Richmond High School. I graduated from Richmond High School. Strange coincidences. And, you talk about the spiritual battle and forces like that. There were so many coincidences. His little town where he grew up, one of their major industries, what little industry they had, was manufacturing of coffins. A half a block from me was a coffin factory, and we kids used to climb up, in the evening and look through the windows at all these coffins. I mean, it got so weird. It's the kind of thing I don't even like to tell people, because they'll think I'm going nuts or something.
No, I can hear what you're saying.
Yeah, me too. And that's not, I don't think, infection. I think that's just evidence of a life path you were given, that this was something that you had to do. I don't know if you guys believe in predestination. I think that's a pretty strong Christian idea in some ways. But there's no doubt you were meant to look into this.
I could not live with Conn if I go up there and look into this. It's just that simple. And once I did, I could not back off, because I found out more and more, and that's when I started going to authorities and being virtually talked with one judge, and he made it clear, how can we go after a pastor, church state, all that stuff, and it was just futile, and yet I went to the highest people who could have done something, like the bishop of the Disciples of Christ Church. Took her out to lunch, and I don't know. It has affected my life. There's no doubt about that. But it's like I gave it over to the Lord, and I have my fellow people in my tell me, hey Dave, you got it behind you, which I have pretty much done that, but it's pretty hard, and because it's a major failure. I will say this, by the way. I was when I first looked into Jones, I was a thoroughgoing, what you would call a real liberal-minded person, and that's when it all came down. That's when it's almost like when I spent that 2 days crying out to the Lord. He made it very clear to me. He says, you're not equipped. You don't know what's going on. That's the word came. It's like I could almost hear God saying, You're one of that liberal crowd. You just happened to stumble into some information and saw the evil. But you're one of them. And I will say this, had I been back then what I am now, there's no doubt I would have gotten through to people. But I was not equipped mentally. I didn't have the wisdom and the strength and the basic strength of God within me to do it. But if I were then what I now, yeah.
Well, I hope you don't beat yourself up over this, man. I really don't. And
no, I don't.
Whatever we missed something, and we're forgiven for it, But we got Christian Wallace. Christian is a good guy. He's a Christian as well. You got any questions, Christian? Or anything to add?
Sure. Hey, what's up, guys?
What's up, man?
I caught at the end of the show, and usually when somebody's close to a situation, you're so close. It's hard to. Everyone else sees the conspiratorial side of it, and they can look at all the angles and try to piece it together. But a lot of times, when people are telling the truth, because when they're so close to a situation, they're so involved in it that they kind of don't see the forest for the trees. They see it the way that a different sort of perspective. But I came across this thing, and I just wanted to read it to see if it rang any bells or if anything came up. It said, in 1968, a guy named Richard Dwyer was listed in a publication of Who's Who in the CIA. And basically what happened was that it said he wasn't the only link to the CIA in Guyana, but those previously mentioned by U.S. Ambassador John Burke and other officials named Richard McCoy were both heavily involved with the intelligence community. The U.S. Embassy in Georgetown also housed the CIA station. At the time, Guyana had a socialist government and was likely a target for covert ops. Dan Weber, sent to Guyana after the massacre, was also with the CIA. The official attorney for the survivors, Joseph Blatchford, was involved in a scandal involving CIA infiltration of the Peace Corps. And then there was this missing money that just disappeared after the slaughter. Conservative estimates place the amount at $26 million. Others place it at $2 billion. At the time, a major international money laundering operation was headquartered in Italy involving the P2 Lodge, and the place was located in Panama, not too far from Jonestown. So it kind of like all this stuff, I was just throwing it out there to see what sticks, and then it goes into more stuff about like James Earl Ray and all these connections that lead to this Guyana and this Jonestown stuff. So I just wanted to throw some of that out there.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. The person who asked the question, how could this have happened? Jones was not just a loner all the way through, but I'm not naive to think that later, as I got involved in all this stuff and very high up, that all sorts of forces didn't come in and start commingling. But he was a loner all the way from the start in his initial approach to the disciples and getting a church. That was all on his own. Nobody else was helping him. It was his charisma and his power and his manipulative ability that got him. But later, I have no doubt that once he got like really getting into the higher up, that all sorts of forces didn't come in, and he had all sorts of connections in, and some of them were more powerful than others, and some of them, I think, like the supposed CIA thing, I don't think they would given him the time of day in any serious way, other than to observe what he was doing, because that's their business.
Right. No, I didn't mean to imply that, that at all. No, I was just saying that, as a matter of fact, you just stated it exactly, that as he started to build himself up, that, then probably they took notice of him And, sure, things were happening around there.
Okay.
I just wanted to...
My end of that, though, is I think that they took note of him as a young man in Indiana when he hooked up with that cop who was the youth cop, who then later on rejoined him in Brazil. And the cop, I forget his name right now, but he was involved with the CIA in Brazil and international security training. And then you have the whole World Vision thing. There's just way too much there. And I don't know if he was a CIA creation from the start, but it seemed like he was being handled all the way up.
And Mark Chapman, Ed, was part of the World Vision Order.
And also David Hinckley.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got May Pang coming on, by the way. You hear that?
Oh.
Yeah, May Pang's coming on.
Sounds good.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be good. September.
That's really neat. No, great show. No, go ahead, guys. Keep going. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to
David, what is your opinion about Dwyer? Do you think he was CIA?
Who?
Dwyer.
Dwyer?
Yeah.
Yeah, Richard Dwyer.
Boy,
yeah, he was. It says he was listed in 1968 in a who's who of the CIA publication.
Hmm. It could be.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a publication that outs CIA agents, but they do work out of embassies. And then there's one report that he left Guyana and then went to go work in Grenada, with shortly an invasion after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
But going back to the other thing, why did Jones get started? That's not too difficult for me to understand how he made his inroads into Guyana. It was cheap property out there in the middle of the boondocks. And also, he was his vision and his political leanings, the whole thing. I'm sure that Forbes Burnham would not be upset with a guy like that, but he didn't know he was evil. I just can't believe that, even though I did try to warn him.
Well, if Jones was a socialist, Marxist type of guy, then what was he doing? Why was he so close to the CIA State Department in Guyana?
Anything to strengthen his position in any way. He would be this. He claimed to be at one time a Republican. It didn't matter. Whatever he said was to embolden and to further his agenda, and he knew he could get away with saying almost anything. And but he did it mainly because people were so enthralled with him. He was so charismatic and so apparently genuine. He was the smoothest operator imaginable. He just snowed people right and left. Like I say, Rosalind Carter, she absolutely was just overwhelmed and enthralled with him, man.
Now, was that before, with Ruth Carter Stapleton, was that before or after she became involved with Larry Flint?
No, I'm talking about...
Yeah, Rosalind Carter's sister was Ruth Carter Stapleton.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one, I'm assuming that's the one that she wanted to meet.
You don't know the thing on that.
Okay, yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, that is something to look into, because this would have been 1977.
Yeah, that's right around that time. Yeah, that's right around that time, yeah.
Yeah. But it could be, because of those connections, maybe that's what stimulated Rosalind to get those two together.
Well, her
but they never did.
Her sister was a big evangelist.
Yeah. But as far as I know, they never did get together.
Right.
But so, but anything. I mean, Jones knew he was his power was in his cleverness and his ability and his colorful nature and his ability for a spiel. He knew it was amazing to listen to him talk. And
how many times did you go to his services and hear him talk?
Twice. I went to once up in Redwood Valley and once in San Francisco. And that was like maybe a year or so later. Very smooth operator. And just he had crowds of people. I mean, it's stunning how he made his way so fast. But he had the connections. And like I say, I'm convinced he had the goods on Mayor Moscone. He probably said, "Hey, Mayor," and I believe that he even supplied some of his sweetest little cult members for Moscone, but that's off the record, you know.
Well, Milk, Harvey Milk, it's pretty much out in the open. The guy had like a 15-year-old boyfriend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's in the record, right?
Yeah, he's known for having scads of young, yeah, and then I guess I mentioned he wrote this elaborate letter to President Carter. But even toward the end, when it got a little controversial, even Milk put out certain things that were kind of protecting his image or something. When it got toward the very end, he was no longer the absolute, devotee. But that's, you can't trust anything people say when they realize something's coming down. They will say this or that to get out from under being tainted in any way with a person.
Right.
Even though, and behind the scenes, they're all for him and getting as much benefit from him as they can. So, but, oh, by the way, I just wanted to mention one thing. You mentioned somebody mentioned the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Do you know, or have you speculated in all of your investigations as to why Africa is the only continent in the world with a heterosexual AIDS epidemic? Has that ever entered your mind?
Interesting. What do you think it is?
I'll tell you. Let me tell you this. In 1965, I had a lengthy conversation with a Peace Corps member who had just come back. This was at 37th and Barrett in Richmond, California, on the far side of the Sunday school wing, came out. And he was just enthralled with what they were accomplishing over there. But here's the key thing. He said, we're teaching them anal sex. And his reason for doing that was to control the population. And he was very proud of that. But of course he had no idea what that would ultimately lead to. But you'd be hard pressed to get an old time Peace Corps worker to admit to that. But I heard it straight from this guy, and he was just proud of it. And I'm not here or there on his motivations. Maybe were good in his mind, and he had no idea, But because of the AIDS epidemic in Africa, you'd be hard pressed to hear, get a Peace Corps to admit that they were training them. In fact, I've had a fitful time even trying to verify that. But this guy was genuine, and he was just honest and forthright, and even proud of what they were doing. He just relayed it out. So that's something you probably never heard, huh?
I haven't. Have you guys?
Hmm?
I'm asking the other guys on the phone.
No. But it still wouldn't explain how the males are getting AIDS, because you guys know it's almost impossible for a heterosexual man to get AIDS from a woman. I mean, you'd have to have unprotected intercourse with a lesion on your penis that actually went to the blood vessels. And
in those facilities, you don't know what kind of physical situation they had. They didn't have the best medical or even the best health treatments and facilities and all. No, I think there's a connection there. Heterosexual. It wasn't just homosexuals. It was a genuine heterosexual epidemic, and women. Well, women could get it rather easily, and so I don't know. I just know that's a fact, and I just dump it out because I haven't really told too many people about it. I've mentioned it to a few people, but it does strike me as strange that because they were trained in anal sex, that turns out to be the only heterosexual epidemic, continental epidemic in the world. I just found it kind of strange. And the timing on it, by the way, that was only just a decade before when they think that the AIDS, the very incipient stages of AIDS was in process in Africa. So the timing is pretty extraordinary. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting that in Africa today they think that and even in Haiti, parts of Haiti, they think that it's a cure for AIDS to rape an infant.
Oh.
Did you know that?
No, I've never heard that, but I'm not surprised at all sorts of bizarre things like that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not surprised. But in Africa, that's just fraught with all sorts of, faulty stories and stuff.
I think it began because the theory came about that you couldn't catch AIDS by having sex with younger and younger women, but then later on, the theory came out that, well, there must be a cure for AIDS or prevention of AIDS or something. Yeah, it's just bizarre.
Yeah, it's bizarre, but it's not surprising in very primitive societies to have all sorts of outrageous beliefs.
Right.
That's why tomatoes went so long without being eaten, because all these people thought they were poison.
Yeah. I notice, I can't help but notice as you look at these disasters, the really big ones that linger in the mind in the last 10 or 12 years, they're all big centers of black magic. Indonesia, New Orleans, Haiti.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you guys know, but Indonesia is like, it's like the black magic capital of the world. That nut
Haiti?
job. Haiti, they're into the voodoo there big time, yeah.
Yeah.
But Suharto and his family, they were just like completely off the deep end. And, you hear these stories about HARP and things and sort of, man-made disasters, but I sometimes look at those things and go, I wonder, if it isn't some kind of divine or karmic retribution or whatever you want to call it. Because anytime you play...
I am definitely not averse to that kind of thing. I think that's entirely possible, especially if you're steeped in the historical tradition, the Old Testament. That's what was going on with Israel and all sorts of things. God would land on them with all sorts of things. And I also think that this is something I wrote down. I think that it's not a coincidence whenever, when we saw the intelligent design movement take hold, the timing was unusual because it was very shortly after the whole full movement of wiping Christianity and Christ out of the culture back in the 70s. That began, and I think this is the irony I see. Lo and behold, when the scientists themselves started coming up with reasons to kind of prove that God doesn't exist, when that started, very shortly after that, it seems like God allowed scientists themselves to discover the system of communication of information at the cell level, which is beyond doubt now, and it can only come from a mind. So my point is that when the scientists themselves started to prove that God didn't exist, God allowed scientists themselves to find the information that they had no answer to. So mull that one over. That's a coincidence, because, and the coincidence is just there all through history. Why did God finally allow science to find evidence for His existence when they were trying to say that He doesn't exist? I think that's extraordinary. I really do. And I've been looked a lot into ID. In fact, I mentioned that a lot in my book, The Specific Density of Scientists. I make a point. I'm trying to urge the intelligent design people to be patient, because I've collaborated, but I've hobnobbed with a lot of scientists, because and my own background is in applied science, lead analyst with Chevron's environmental lab. So I've hobnobbed with a lot of true scientists. I don't consider myself a true scientist, but I know and have talked with a lot of them. And it just strikes me as strange that all this time, finally, through science itself, it's like God says, well, this has gone too far. I'm going to pull an irony and let science itself discover some things. I'm not too happy about that, because I think if more and more, that's going to I think we're due for a scientific revolution, and I say it's going to be 1 to 2 decades. And that's going to be a major thing in culture because that'll be the first scientific revolution that breaks the paradigm of pure natural science and goes beyond and the paradigm will be broken, and it will go over to supernatural realities. And that's going to be bizarre, believe me.
Yeah, I agree. Now, can I ask quickly, Ed, did you want to wrap it up? You said in the text box you were pooped and you're hungry.
Yeah, I'm getting tired, yeah.
Okay, I got one quick question.
No, but go, yeah.
Now that we've broached this idea of formal magic and dark ritual and stuff like that, was there any evidence of that in your research of Jim Jones? Was he conscious of the evil? Was he dialoguing with it, or was he just completely sort of perfect, as Father Malachi Martin would say in Hostage to the Devil? Was he perfectly possessed by it, or was there this sort of evidence of?
Well, I think he was in league with the devil to a certain length, because he made no bones about throwing the Bible down and trying to convince his followers that God that you're all after, he doesn't exist, because and then he said, he threw the Bible down, and then he said, strike me dead if you can, and then he said, see, I'm still alive. I see that as a major thing, because I think ultimately, he'd have to really think what's going on when he went to his death. Well, I'm still, a fairly young man, and I'm about to die. I wonder if he reflected on what he charged God with in 10 years earlier, or even 7 years earlier. I think there is something to that. I just happen to believe that there's just tons of evidence. And I think there may be, like I say, when the scientific revolution happens, that's going to drive scientists crazy, because they're going to be in a spot where they see evidence for God, and then they're going to have to say, do I accept God, and do I choose to become a follower of God or not? We're fraught with atheists, and the atheist thinkers like Richard Dawkins, they're just desperate to attack Christianity and God. And the reason I think they're off target is because they're approaching it from a straw man thing. They charge intelligent design people with being religious, and believe me, that is not anything to do with it whatsoever. Religion is not involved with the genuine intelligent design people. They just know that they're finding and proving that a mind is involved in the transmittance of information at the cell level. It can't happen by evolution. A mind is behind the DNA in the process of building, and that's all transmitted not just by information, but by way of codes. And if a code is involved, a mind has to be involved.
Yep.
So we're in for something in the next 1 or 2 decades. It's going to be truly something, that revolution. And they're fighting now. They're going nuts. Even the evolutionists now are behind the scenes admitting to one another, Darwinism, it's losing it. They're seeing all the flaws in it, but they don't want it to get out because they're desperate. They're just desperate, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean the fossil record never really supported it, and there were too many missing links in the theory.
Way too many.
Yeah, I think
there had to have been so many transitions, and then they hoaxed it so many times with the Peltdown and then Lucy, and then the whole joke about Lucy was that it was Lucifer, and then Dawkins and all of them. You have two groups. You have the axe grinders that have some kind of thing against religion, and then they only debate Christians. Sometimes they'll debate Jews, but the other thing they do is they take the Bible out of context. The other thing that they do is that whole theory comes straight out of the Lodge, and the Lodge got it from the Hindus. It comes out of the East. And the whole thing is, it's about that everything is getting more complex, because what it actually is, it's a humanistic theory that man will actually evolve into godhood. So that's why they show the ape slowly getting, walking upright. And then eventually, what's the next stage? Man becoming his own god. And what it worked its way out of was the absentee clockmaker, that there was this deistic framework, and there was a god that set in motion the universe. He stepped off of the throne or wherever he went, and then the collective mind of man is God, and that's actually socialistic, and that's where socialism comes from. It all stems back to the same thing. It all goes back to the same place, and Dawkins is not impressive. He's not intelligent. I don't know why he has the chair that he has. Real atheists are philosophers do not respect him. Have you looked into him very much? I have. And were you aware that that the reason he's saying that child molestation is not a big deal, he doesn't think that's a dangerous thing, and I think the reason is that he himself, that he was molested as a child too, by one of his teachers.
I did not know that.
No, that's true. That is absolutely, I guarantee that, because in certain conversations with one guy that was in dialogue with him, Dawkins admitted to that and then went on to say that it was no big deal. But I think that it affected his life in some way that he doesn't imagine, and forced him to have a kind of a weird view of sexuality.
And
that.
He's definitely very bitter, and then he said you should, mock believers and, all this, and that's when a lot of mainstream, more philosophical types of, maybe agnostic types that were on the fence, or that were more, preeminent, scientists kind of backed away from him, because he's got an axe to grind on top of, whatever.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you this. I really believe this. I believe that Dawkins is in some way unaware of his situation And I think if you look into it, his website is almost like he's got a cult himself going there, and he's the cult leader. I believe that. I believe that he's unaware of what's going on in his cult mentality. And that's the thing I'm concerned about with a lot of scientists is, that there's many scientists who absolutely they just don't have the ability to think courageously and honestly. I just believe that, because that's why they go out attacking all these things. They're saying these intelligent design people, they're just religious. There's not a clue to support that. That isn't to say that some people get support for their Christian belief because of what ID is coming up with. I have no doubt about that. But the basic thrust of intelligent design is simply scientific, purely scientific. It's finding evidence that information itself is being transmitted by code.
Right.
That's just hard to refute.
Well, it's funny. I'll tell you real quick, just real funny, Doc Laurie, for everyone that dislikes him. He was on a radio show for BBC, and he was debating I think it was a Catholic priest, and he said, most Christians, they can't even name the first four Gospels. And the guy said, well, Richard, what's your favorite book? And he said, Origin of Species. And he said, yeah, but that's not the whole title. What's the whole title? And he goes,
yeah, I remember that.
And he
that
goes,
was great.
Long titles in those days. He goes, oh God, what's the title?
yeah. He said, oh God, what's the title?
Yeah.
That's so bizarre.
So you heard that. I'm glad. I wanted to, yeah. I thought that was.
Well, Dawkins, it becomes very clear to me that Dawkins is a very angry man.
Yeah.
He is.
And I don't know what that anger stems from, but I have a speculation that it could be tied to something he hasn't recovered from his molestation, his desperate attempt to say it was no big deal. He thinks he protests too much.
Yeah, I'm going to look into that. I'm glad you brought that up because I had forgotten
about that. That's a given. There's no doubt about that. That's
right.
Very trustworthy. But you'll be able to find it. In fact, you can look up. There's a book written by Scottish clergyman. I think Albertson or something like that. It's called the Dawkins Letters, and he wrote this series of dialogues with Dawkins. And the very first letter that he wrote to him, actually Dawkins put on his own website. And it's an amazing book to read. It's just a short little book. It's only about maybe 100 pages. The Dawkins Letters.
I'll definitely look for that.
Yeah.
So, Ed, I have a question for you, and it has to do with tonight's show and just this general theme. So, and David, do you think that this sort of like presence of evil is more in the world now? Well, all of you, Christian, everybody. Do you guys think that this presence of evil is more in the world now than? I mean, I'm 47, so I don't have that long a life memory, but I'll just throw it out there. And then I have a follow-up question.
Well, I'll say yes, I do. I think that evil is ever present and increasing, and I also think that's with the biblical. If you look at the Olivet Discourse and also much of the end times concerns in Timothy, 2 Timothy talks about things. It's very clear that evil is on the increase, and that fits with the biblical prophecies.
Okay.
So what was your?
The follow-up question is that a good thing or a bad thing? Now that may sound like a stupid question out of the gate.
No, I don't think that's stupid at all.
You see, because evil is black on black. You can't see it, and that's where it's strongest. The fact that it's, and this also goes to the Bible, when they talk about, in these times, all that has been hidden will be made known.
Yeah.
And all of this stuff is bubbling up. I mean, you could have a nervous breakdown trying to digest it all. You know, nonstop child molestation. You know, I mean, all corruption in our systems. You know, even you take even in our justice systems. The concept of a wrongful conviction was unheard of 2 decades ago. Now it's like every week. Oh, so and so let out after 28 days, 28 years in jail. So and so let out, and you know, our politicians. The correlation you made to Obama and Jim Jones, which I think is cogent, by the way. I do think Obama is a cherry-picked kind of cult leader figure. He's the ultimate distraction.
The thing that concerned me about Obama, the major thing that concerned me, is he held in his own committee and wouldn't let it come out for a vote this bill where the legislature, like 98% of them wanted this bill that would allow a child that survived abortion to be medically taken care of. And Obama would not let that out of committee. In fact, he voted against it once or twice and earlier. And then he was, I think it was his committee, and he wouldn't. But that's a fact. He voted to actually essentially murder little kids that survived abortion. You read some of the stories about some grown-ups that did survive abortion. I mean, it's possible to become quite a person.
Right.
Anyway, that's disturbing. He didn't. I asked myself, why did he do that? He doesn't have to do that if he's in politics. He doesn't have to be that outrageous. So that told me something about some kind of intensity about the man that I saw, and that was a kind of a similarity to Jones. I'm not saying that, of course, he's pathological in the extent that Jones was, but there's something similar about the frenzied narcissism and charisma.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think he came out of the political machine. The whole thing was just amazing how he just enthralled people. And I think he was chosen for what's going on.
Okay. I would agree with that 100%. And I think he's an intelligence creation. The guy has no ID. The guy has his identification papers are faulty. So he's created somewhere. So now we have two choices. Yeah.
Along that line, you remember when Sheriff Arpaio had his group together, and they were really disciplined people. It wasn't like they were fanatics or something. He just gathered them because he wanted to follow through on some information. And then he gathered all this information. I watched that whole press conference. And the media that were there, by the way, the media are getting less and less trustworthy. But anyway, all the media there, not one of them began to deal with the evidence. All they did was launch diatribes at Sheriff Arpaio. And that told me a lot because the information he had was very compelling.
I'm sorry, what are we talking about? What did Joe bring out?
That Obama's birth certificate and all his paperwork is all bogus. Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But the thing is, now we have two choices to look at. Either he's some Muslim, socialist, communist, extremist, terrorist who snuck into the White House under the nose of the CIA and the Secret Service and George Bush and DHS, and he snuck in, okay? Or he's a creation by these same exact people who are evil, this evil empire, and do believe in human sacrifice and the sacrificing aborted babies and stuff like that. And he's their creation, brought in, but they want us to know that his paperwork is no good and he's possibly this Marxist Muslim extremist, because what they are trying to do is they want us to be cheering on. They want the military to come in and do an overthrow of this president, this evil bad guy president. We overthrow him and we all cheer on the tanks coming down the street to protect us from this president. And that's what I see happening.
That's not too far of a thing to think about, but I do get specious, I think, meaning that it's plausible but not real. But let me tell you what I wrote in 2000 in the winter of 2007-2008 on San Diego State University's website. In the article, Jonestown, its portent has arrived. In one part of it, I said, my fear is that he, Obama, might well see the light only after some cataclysmic event of his own making. Because, you see, unlike Jones, who had his own little cult, Obama leads a gigantic cult. He leads it disguised as an outsider. The cult is Islam, and Obama leads it by way of being its great Western defender. In the most insidious fashion, he has become the energizer of Islam's massive incursion from east to west. As president, he would be the principal driver of Islam's invasion, and therefore the ultimate manifestation of the Jonestown portent. Just that simple. So that's been out for, like I say, 5 years.
Every time I say something about this, I always get in trouble, so maybe I'll make it worth it. I've met him, my brother. He was best man at his wedding. Obama was. They got married in the White House. And,
whoa. Obama was best man at your brother's wedding?
Yeah, when my brother works in the Department of Defense, and he's a liaison to the White House, but he used to be Secret Service, and the tip of the spear is the part of the Secret Service that doesn't do the counterfeiting. They do the actual guarding of the president.
Right.
And he was a senior, agent, and they were like fast friends, I guess. And
well, Chris, you know this is going on the air, right?
Yeah, that's why I said I'm going to make it worth it if I say anything.
Okay. I'm not turning the recorder off.
I'll tell you. Okay, you know what I'll do? I'll just say this. I won't say anything inside baseball. I'll save the good stuff for until I'll say it all at once, because I don't get talked to for a while. And okay, this is what I'll say. He was in Dearborn, Michigan, when he got reelected, and do you guys all know the story about Dearborn and how it's huge?
It's the highest Muslim concentration in.
Yeah.
I was actually in. Yeah. Well, no, it's around Buffalo as well. There's a huge Muslim population, but I know that for some reason they like Michigan. Same things going on up here north, guys, as well. I mean, there's parts of my city I can go to, Toronto, where, it's just loaded with Muslims. And, they kind of emigrate the same way the Chinese do, in that they take a section and they don't mix.
Yeah.
And, anyways, sorry, Christian.
75% of the Muslims, their facilities are run by Wahhabis, and that's pretty dangerous itself, because the hierarchy is the thing to fear, and in the lower regions of Islam, they haven't a clue as to what's going on really. It's just that simple. But the hierarchy is running things, and that's why you don't see too many of the lower level Muslim population objecting to the horrors that are going on, like the one in the one in Nigeria, that stuff that's going on with that Muslim, that terrorist group. By the way, Hillary didn't even put that guy on the list when she had a chance to a few months ago.
Right.
That's a horrible man.
What were we going to say about
but why aren't the Muslims objecting and calling all this out? It's because they are kind of fearful of doing so, because the hierarchy is not going to tolerate it.
Yeah.
So, Christian, what were you going to say about what was going on in Dearborn, Michigan?
And the wedding. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You guys.
I don't forget anything. I don't forget nothing. Go ahead.
You guys were talking about him with the Muslim connection. Well, the Dearborn, Michigan, they made it like a no-go zone. It got like really tense there, And what he did was, of all the places that he could have been, I mean, he's only one guy, unless he has, a doppelganger. He showed up on his second, when he was reelected. The one place he could have been in all of America was in Dearborn, and he said, "Thank you all. You can. This is all just in the public record. You can watch the tape." He went there and said, "Thanks for getting me reelected," basically.
Really?
Yeah, and they were a Christian group went that was like protesting. They went there, and the police were Muslim and stuff, and there was a whole big thing. I wasn't following it too closely, but I can't remember what it was. Something I just happened to stumble upon it, and I didn't realize what a big one population there were of Muslims, like right in the middle of Michigan, to where they actually stopped. Like they have these places, they're called no-go zones. They have them in Europe and here in America and stuff, and they kind of sort of take over an area, and they won't let outsiders go through. And the police are also, it's almost like if they wanted to institute, like, let's say Sharia law there or something, they can kind of operate even their own sort of legal way, and they just won't let outsiders come through. And
But this sort of takes away from the evil Obama thing, because this is a whole sort of Anglo-American thing now. They're bringing the British the Bar Association, the British Accreditation Registry in London is allowing Sharia law. That's right. I read it in the Guardian or the London Observer about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And
there's been efforts in.
So
I was going to say there's been efforts in Michigan to begin Sharia law too.
Yeah.
I'll find the
so
clip.
You gotta wonder if we have. I mean, what are they doing? Why? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just said I'll find the clip for you guys.
Yeah, so I gotta wonder what's going on. The whole, and then there's been this talk for 20 years or longer. I mean, there's Prince Charles's profound affinity for the Saudi royal family and Islamic culture, and talk of his conversion for a couple decades now. And why are these really evil people? And the Vatican too is really cozy with Islam. They're very cozy.
That's right. This new pope is.
Yeah, and they I don't know if you guys follow the Vatican news. I do, because it's very interesting. And David, if you listen to this station regularly, you'll realize, I guess, that they're or already they're profound power holders in the world, despite the fact that the media disparages them. They're profound power holders, but they came out with a ruling. The College of Cardinals, but there's another body. I think it's archbishops, and they perform a legal function in the Vatican, and they do canonical law. And the Vatican's official position as of about 4 weeks ago is that the Jews are not entitled to Israel because they are no longer the chosen people, because the covenant was broken by Jesus, and all people are chosen now. So you gotta it's these page 7 stories on the newspaper that really fascinate me.
Boy, I'll say.
And Ed's show, where he re-examines older news stories like Jim Jones and the Black Dahlia case, and brings all of these people like yourself, David, and these experts on who've done years of research, and you go, okay, there's the real story. Isn't that fascinating? But so I've been wondering lately, what is the agenda of the, let's call it the Anglo-American Empire? What's their agenda with Islam? And so you've got sort of 2 new world orders. You've got this sort of IMF cartel, and that looks finished now. That looks finished, which is the end of the British Empire, by the way. Yes. Because everywhere Britain went and pulled out, You know, Gandhi got him out of India. They got him out of the African countries. But they left their system, and people didn't realize that they were colonized even without the redcoats there. And now all that's going. And so you gotta wonder, well, they're not giving up. What are they doing? And you got this Muslim thing going on, which seems pretty organized. It doesn't seem random. It doesn't seem arbitrary. The flooding of Western societies with Arab culture, hostile Arab culture, and they are globalists as well. Never forget that.
Yeah.
Okay? They want an Islamic caliphate to rule the world. That's
right.
That is the mission of their.
That's what it's all about. And the world is letting it happen. That's because they're ignorant of the very fact that Islam is not just a religion, but it is a state.
Muhammad is the most social and political of all of the religious people who've come in history. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I mean, this is an out-of-the-box state. You have a legal system. It's they don't want anything else. You know, we got this guy in Canada arrested on a Via Rail from Montreal to Ottawa. They were picked up by the RCMP after about a year of surveillance. They had bombs on them. I don't know if you guys got that news in the U.S., but he's in and out of court now. And he refuses to be tried by the Canadian Criminal Code. He will only accept justice administered from the Quran. So he's in this endless series of first appearances now. You know, it's quite
well,
humorous.
If something isn't done, there's no question that Germany is going to be a Muslim country in 20 to 25 years, without a doubt, because the birth rate of the Muslims is tremendous compared to the birth rate of the rest of Germany.
Okay.
2.5 versus 1.5.
Yeah. I'm not sure I consider Turks real Muslims. The Turks are a funny people. They'll wear they're not real Muslims in the way Pakistanis are, in the way Saudis are. They're not. They've been polluted too much by European culture, I think. So and that's
what sect are they of?
Well, they're not the I don't.
They're Shias or Sunnis, because those comprise almost 99% of all Muslims.
Well, okay. Let me put it to you this way: the Turks are to Islam what the Vatican is to Christianity. Okay, so you guys down there in the States are all just sort of self-taught, self-directed, personal relationship with God Protestants. Up here in Canada, we're under the iron grip of the Jesuits. Yeah. This is a Catholic country, okay? Now the Turk, go ahead.
I was just saying, but what you just said has been accurate for a long time in history. But what I'm saying is that is starting to change in Turkey. But you're right, what you said. Turkey is above the religious aspects of it.
Yeah.
It was, but that's starting to change.
Well, it's the only Islamic empire we've seen, right? The Ottoman Empire, and so. Yeah. You know, but and if I have a lot of Turkish friends here in West Toronto, I find them very nice, interesting, good-thinking people. Well, I forget the guy's name, but they've got a writer over there who's shortlisted for the Nobel Prize, a novelist. You know, they're a very progressive culture, advanced in science and mathematics. But that's not the Islam we're getting. That's not the Islam Paris is getting. That's not the Islam London is getting. Yeah. That's not the Islam that Dearborn is getting. We're getting the sort of like, you know, hard core. Please don't take offense to this as Americans, but we're getting the Protestant Islams. The people, well, I read it, and it says I can kill people. Whereas when you have more social organization and more expert interpretation, like like Turkey, then it provides a moderating balance to the interpretation of Scripture, right? So, but those are not the Muslims we're getting, and I have to wonder.
They're getting the same thing that Germany's getting and Sweden's getting, is starting to swell with Muslims.
Yeah,
it's the same, driven by the hierarchy of very fanatical people. They are controlling most of the mosques, and they're they come out of, well, Wahhab came out of Saudi, the western part of Saudi Arabia in this late 1700s or early 1800s, and he was a radical, and that group is alive and well now.
So we didn't really answer the question, though. I mean, I asked it, but I'm not sure I have an answer. Any theories? Christian, you have your experience with your brother and knowing Obama and everything. What do you think the agenda is here? Like, what is going on? Why are we being flooded with these Muslims? What is the game plan here?
I'll tell you. It's destabilization, okay? Just like Wesley Clark says in the Mideast, our policy over there is to destabilize the Mideast, and which is why we, they're all shooting at each other over there, bombing each other all into oblivion. I think it's the same thing here. They bring in these to destabilize. I see that pattern as well, and I just see it as part of the same agenda. I don't see also too. It's anti-Christian, which they definitely are. Mm-hmm. So that benefits them to distract people from Christ. But anyway, that's what I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. But I just think it's just a matter of time before Europe goes. The writing's on the wall, and I do not know how anything is going to be reversed. It's pretty depressing.
Well, I mean, all culture is ending now. When you look at the most pristine and preserved cultures, like the Japanese and the Chinese, in their own way, they're ending. I mean, they're doing their stuff. Japan is being assaulted by all kinds of calamity, whether it's manufactured or acts of God, anybody's version, but they're on the ropes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Culture itself is collapsing. That's an interesting point.
All culture is collapsing. African culture is collapsing by disease. You look at the Chinese, okay? I lived over there. I speak Mandarin. They're doing themselves in. I mean, 95% of their above ground and below ground water is toxic now. It can't be remediated by any form of water treatment. There's just too many chemicals in it. You can't believe what goes on over there. I mean,
yeah. Well, even in their schools, the children in their schools are rebellious now, and very antagonistic, and speaking, negatively and all stuff, and disrupting classes. It's starting to happen in China. I have a friend who's over there now, and he's been back and forth, and he speaks Mandarin also. But he taught what's going on in schools is pretty interesting. They have just mocked their teachers, and so they're almost as bad as Western culture.
Yeah, I taught over there for 2 years, and from 92 to 94, and you would never get a kid step out of line.
But it's a different story now, though.
Well,
not that it's completely out of control, but it's starting to happen. That's what this guy's seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're being tainted by Western, rebellious elements of Western culture, which gets away with doing that. No authority, no discipline, and it, who knows where it's going to end. But which have said, culture isn't going to end. That's a scary thought, but that's a good way.
Well, it is. We're all going to be merged into a single culture, and it's inevitable. I mean, the writing was on the wall the moment we started sailing. The Europeans, although the Chinese did it before. The Chinese created boats, and out they looked at the world, they didn't find anyone civilized, and they went home. And no, that's true. That's
absolutely right, Bruce. That's absolutely spot on.
They're a fascinating people, the Chinese. Let me tell you, they've never gone out and taken over other cultures. Now you can say, well, Tibet. Well, they've always considered Tibet as theirs, and Tibet has Tibet has the water tables that feed both the Ganges River in India and the Yangtze River in China. And
there's a lot more to the whole Dalai Lama and that whole scene that I was gonna say on firing lines, and I accidentally fell asleep on the break. So for maybe tomorrow night, 'cause I have other big news too. There's a whole lot more to that. What's going on there.
Can you drop a couple hints tonight?
You know what? I hate reading stuff without reading them from my notes because I don't want to get anything wrong. So let me see if I can just find it real fast, and you guys talk, and then I'll.
Yeah, I won't sleep. That's too big a curiosity, Dan.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but the Chinese I find to be a fascinating people. When we look at them, we see an ugly empire because of the brutality of the government, but you got to understand that that's just the way they've been for 5,000 years. Okay?
Yeah, but but in the Chinese Revolution, though, it was simply a single-minded revolution in the communist vein, and so all their religious beliefs and stuff became subordinate because of and I think that's affecting their history now. Although the communist leaders, I don't think you can see them as just orthodox communists anymore.
No, not at all.
Very powerful.
Not at all. But when you live over there, you're actually freer there than you are in North America. They don't bother you. Your house is your home. If you're a man, you run the family as you see fit. I mean, they are and they're not a patriarchy. It's very interesting, the balance between men and women over there. But they stay out of your life and your space. There's actually more respect for you as a spiritual being over there than there is here. Now, the only time the government gets nasty is when there's a big works project like the Three Gorges Dam, and they send the surveyors and the government officials out and say, well, we got to relocate you people. We're going to build new homes and a new village for you 200 kilometers away, and this dam is going to power half of China. And you get these stubborn old Chinese saying, with their ancestor worship, saying, well, no, we've been here 12 generations. We're not moving. They go once, they go twice, they go 3 times. If the people don't listen, big hole gets dug and 100,000 people disappear. And that happens over there. That happens over there.
But in a general sense, your point is well. I believe that they live in a freer, cultural setting than we here in America do. We're just so fraught with regulations tying us in every which way whatsoever.
Well, when you speak about socialism and Marxism and communism, we're in the biggest propaganda mind control bubble in the world right now, North America. And I mean, even as a Canadian looking in on America, I go, what's going on with you guys? But we're just as bad now with this lunatic Stephen Harper. And but if one of the key, I like to travel. So in 2012, I spent 6 months in Costa Rica, and I'm going to be getting married there. I got some land down there. I'm building a house. I'm done with this whole North American thing. But travel is like the ginseng when you're eating sushi. It cleanses your palate, and you come back home and you see things differently. Confucius said that a man who travels 10,000 miles is the same as a man who reads 10,000 books. It just teaches you something. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever lived abroad, but if you were to leave America for a year or a year and a half and come back, you would not believe what you're seeing. You literally would not believe what you were seeing. You would think everybody had gone crazy. And we now are in the biggest propaganda bubble in the world right now. Now, it's breaking. This is exactly what the Soviet Union was like in the 70s. All the really good books were passed around in PDF. They didn't go through publishing companies, or they didn't have PDFs back then, but they were printed at copy shops, and state-sponsored literature was about Russian war heroes and stuff like that from World War II. All the good radio was underground radio. All the good culture was underground culture. And then it just started to spread. Look at what's going on in America right now. Look at where we're talking right now. Revolution Radio. A small independent, we can't even call it, publicly supported like PBS or anything like that. Well, it is and it isn't, but it's just completely driven by truth and goodwill. These are signs. These are signs that something is seriously wrong. And, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I'd say it's increased in the last 10 years, the number of people who are aware, but it's still really low. It's still only 2 out of 10. And you're always going to have this class of people that just hold on and hold on and hold on. And now, let me explain Canada to you. The only people living well in Canada now are civil servants. Okay?
Yeah.
Everybody in the private sector is struggling now. Okay? I've been in high tech for 17 years. In 99, 2000, I billed out at $65 an hour on contract, which translated to about $90 Canadian an hour. I now bill out at about $35 an hour Canadian, $45 an hour Canadian. Everything, all the housing prices are continuing to go up. The car prices, the food prices, all the prices are rising, wages are going down. And this is one of the things, I've never brought this up on a Rev Radio show before, but everybody's talking about this collapse. I'm not convinced there's going to be a collapse. It's going on right now. It's like trying to watch the hands of a clock move other than the second hand. You just don't see it. But you have to be able to look at the data properly. You have to be able to look at the data. All of the pensions are in jeopardy. All of the pensions. So nobody's going to be retiring with money. For the generation after the baby boomers, it's just abysmal because people want to live the way their parents did, and they can't do that anymore. They don't accept it, so they max out on their mortgages and their cars and everything. They're not putting anything away for retirement. We have the equivalent of a 401k here. And what's going to happen when all 65? Yeah. Anyways, I'm going on and on. I'll let somebody else talk.
Well, I think there are going to be some huge events that happen in the near future that are going to have an effect. It's almost like, we were saying earlier, God's going to step in, I think, in some way. I don't know what it's going to be, but the horror that's going on, evil, and who was it? Can ask about evil? Do I think is it good or bad? And that's an interesting question because it seems like evil is going to push us to some kind of. It's going to push us to some kind of change in our state, in our our social makeup or something. It's going to force some things on us that we're unaware of.
Yeah. You look at mainstream American culture now, television and movies and music. It's a sex and death cult. Everything is about killing people. Sons of Anarchy, Hannibal on NBC now. Serial killers and all of this sort of stuff. And they just gloss over it. If you want to understand, and then again, and I'm not being sycophantic or ingratiating here, Ed, but this is what I like about your show. You go under it. People like to be scared in a controlled way. So they'll go see a scary movie, they'll go see this, they'll go see that, and ooh, that's not real. Yeah. At 47, as an intelligent adult, when I want to scare myself, I listen to an Ed Opperman show.
Yeah, I am trying to expose what's going on out there, and I gotta tell you something, guys, it doesn't come easy, I'm under attack all the time, man. And that's why I was asking you, David, if you felt that evil when you're going up against Jim Jones. Cause I'm going up against these guys, and I feel it. And I see where they have,
What do you mean you feel it? Give us an example.
Well, from the first show when Ed started with the West Memphis 3, he had those psychopaths. Remember that?
Yeah.
And, even I felt that one because I wrote to Terry Hobbs, and a few of the trolls started jumping on me when I was saying that he was, welcomed into the loving arms of Johnny Depp and his fellow Thelemites and stuff like that, and they just let me have it and said how stupid I was and shouldn't breed and all this craziness.
All right,
and then sure enough,
that's not being attacked by evil.
And I'll tell you, Chris, though, I can see it that there's people out there that I go up against that and they're into this evil, and they dwell in it, and they dwell in misery, and they dwell in the blood, and they dwell in death. And I can.
Oh, you mean on a metaphysical?
Yeah, on a spiritual level.
Right.
On a spiritual level.
Logical plane of existence we meant. Sorry.
I get that's if I get my daily work.
The actual spiritual battle.
Yeah, and I can see. Let me tell you, I can see how they have power around me. They can get people to lie. They can get the people to lie about me. They can get people to be fooled and be deceived. And I see it. I'm up against it all the time, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's apparently a very small thing in the news, but look what the authorities did to that one guy in that school board meeting.
Yeah.
That was stunning. I mean, he was over 30 seconds or something, and it's like, what up there is going on that they, and also when you see what he was about, boy, everybody has to leap to his side. That was a horrible thing what they were doing to that little 14-year-old girl. The kind of stuff they were dumping on her to read. It's just insane. And no wonder that poor father. I mean, you can't blame him for, even if he lost it more than he did. Who could blame him? But boy, waltz him out and put the handcuffs on him. Wow.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary.
Well, I mean, they're just the police are just kill squads in the U.S. now.
Yeah, the cops are totally out of control.
Yeah.
Tibet, Dalai Lama, Christian.
Pardon me? It's so, one of the things was, I was trying to find one of the juiciest parts of it, but obviously, it ties into, this is something you guys probably already knew, how the Nazis were into the, Tibetans and, what's his name that wrote, 7 Years in Tibet, the mountain climber. There's way more. You know what? Maybe what I'll do is, Bruce, I'll send you this article because it's really long, but I was kind of cherry picking some of the best parts of it, and it gets into the Theosophical Society, and it gets into this tantric Shambhala and all this other stuff that a lot of people don't know about, and the CIA's involvement, and they even alluded to it in JFK when he's sitting there on the bench with Fletcher Prouty. It never says that it's Fletcher Prouty. In that famous scene where he's talking to General Y, Jim Garrison is on the bench. It's Kevin Costner and
Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, Donald Sutherland, and he says, we got the Dalai Lama out in, whatever year, and he says, we were good. That was that's kind of like what this goes into, and it talks about but it's really long. So I'm just trying to find like the best parts. What I'll do is I think I'll send it to you and you can read it. But that's basically the gist of it. Is kind of like the connections there, and there was a lot more to it, and why they took the side they did. I mean, there's just so much. It's hard to even kind of condense it. It talks about Nicholas Roy, it talks about Henry Wallace, and all those guys. And let me read it a little bit more, and I'll find something better because I'm not making much sense with it. I don't think. Oh.
Okay, I would appreciate that. You can just send it through the file accept on Skype.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it's been a good 2.5 hour, many hours of show tonight.
Sorry, I'm in and out. My thing is muting in and out. That's why I just got cut off.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed talking with people that have been into things and been places and stuff with different viewpoints altogether. It's very interesting. So
I enjoyed it. I had a good time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wish I could say the same. Anyway, guys. I love you guys.
So funny.
All right.
Okay.
We had David Conn tonight. Excellent guest. I can't thank you enough, David. He's the owner of the blog truthsleuth.com.
.net.
Oh, yeah. I knew I was going to do that sooner or later.
Truthsleuth.net.
Okay,
right.
truthsleuth.net. And the author of The Pleasure of Fiends, an orthodox study of evil and the meaning in the Jonestown cultic horror, and the specific density of scientists and their secret fears. A new book he just put out, which is LEDNORF'S Dilemma. And I'm going to have all these links on my blog, the Opperman Report, and you can click on there and straight to his, his on.com account. David, do you have anything else you want to leave us with? What if people want to book you for other interviews?
Pardon me?
If people want to book you for other interviews, is there any way to get a hold of you?
Oh, sure. My email, is DAVCON137 at AOL.com. That's the first three letters of my two names, David Conn, DAVCON137 at AOL.com. So, yeah, I'll be happy to respond to people as long as they put something in the subject line that let me know that it was connection with this show or something.
And you got anything else coming up you want to promote?
No, not yet. I'm writing. I'm working on a play that's based on the novel LEDNORF'S Dilemma that I wrote, 9 years ago. But that's down the line. I don't know if I'll ever get through it, but
well, if anything comes up, just send me an email and I'll add it to your page on the Opperman Report blog, and it'll get traffic. So don't worry about it. You have an open. If you want to call in with something, just let us know.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
well,
Bruce.
That's great. Thanks a lot for inviting me on the show. I enjoyed it, and the discussions and the people and all. It was great.
Thank you, sir.
So, okay, I'll let you go.
Thank you, brother. You guys got any last words, Bruce or Christian?
I really enjoyed it. Great show.
Yeah, you're just doing bang up stuff here on Friday nights now, Ed. Really.
Thanks, guys.
I got it. That Black Dahlia show was over the top.
Oh, you like that one, huh?
I cannot believe that guy come to such peace with that, given that it was his father.
Yeah, I think he enjoyed it a little bit too much, but we can get into that on another show. A little too much going on there. I don't know what was going on with that. But we got some guys coming up. You guys are going to like I got May Pang, the girlfriend of John Lennon, and when she comes on, she has a lot of information, guys, that I'm sure a lot of people don't know that I'm going to be able to get out of her. Anthony J. Hilder, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he wants to come on. Dave McGowan's coming back. We're going to do Program to Kill and a lot of stuff about the BTK killing. Russell Kyle is coming on next week, Ann, or the week after? The week after. He runs a crime tour in the Bay Area, and we're going to get into the Symbionese Liberation Army. And next week we got a couple of mob guys, Frank Collada, and I think you're going to find him as well. All right, everybody.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Talk to you soon.
Good night.
Hey, Ann, you there? She left. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Ed.
Hey, good night, Chris, man. Have a good night, all right?
All right, take care.
You too,
Hey,
bro.
big news tomorrow night. Big news.
What?
Tune in. Unless you're not going to tune in. I found out the sex of the baby.
Let me guess. It's a boy.
I'll let you guess.
Okay. All right, bro, man.
I'll put it this way. You're very intuitive.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.